The lawyer's office smelled like old books and expensive wood polish. I sat in my black funeral dress, still numb from burying my mother 3 days earlier. Len lounged across from me, checking his phone like this was just another Tuesday meeting. When the lawyer cleared his throat and began reading, I expected the usual split between siblings. Instead, every word felt like a slap. The house, the savings, Mom's jewelry collection. Everything went to Leonard Whitford. My name appeared nowhere in the will. I must have made a sound because Len finally looked up from his phone. That smirk. I'll never forget that smirk. "Family loyalty has limits, Ellie," he said, sliding the document toward me like he was doing me a favor by letting me see it. "You left Mom to manage everything alone when you moved away." My hands shook so badly I couldn't hold the papers. Everyone in that room, the lawyer, Len's wife hovering by the door, they all seemed to believe his version of events. That I'd abandoned our mother. That I didn't deserve anything. The lawyer cleared his throat again, uncomfortable with my silence. Then he slid a small cream envelope across the mahogany desk. "Your mother left this specifically for you, Eleanor." I didn't open the envelope until I got home to my tiny rental. The handwriting was Mom's, shaky but unmistakable. "My dearest Ellie," it began, and my eyes immediately filled with tears. She wrote about loving both her children equally, about trusting Len to handle the legal details when she got too confused. Then came the part that made my stomach drop. He said these changes were necessary for tax purposes. I hope I did the right thing. "There's something unfinished in the blue room upstairs. I wanted to tell you, but Len said it could wait." The blue room was her sewing room, where she'd spent countless hours making quilts. What could be unfinished there? Mom's words felt wrong, disconnected. She'd never worried about tax purposes before. She'd always been sharp with money, even at 83. I read the letter 3 more times, searching for hidden meanings. The date at the top was 2 weeks before she died. 2 weeks, when Len had been helping her with paperwork. I pressed the letter to my chest and let myself cry properly for the first time since the funeral. I needed to see the house one more time before Len sold it. He'd already hired a realtor, already started clearing out rooms. When I arrived, his BMW sat in the driveway next to a silver sedan I didn't recognize. I used my key, the one Mom gave me years ago, and stepped into the foyer. Voices drifted from the kitchen. Len's smooth tone, someone responding about market value and quick sales. I walked through rooms filled with memories, touching furniture that held decades of family dinners and Christmas mornings. In the living room, I found cardboard boxes. One was open, filled with Mom's photo albums. Another held her good china, the set she promised me when I got married. On the dining table sat manila folders labeled Whitford Holdings and property transfer documents. My heart pounded as I lifted one folder. Inside were contracts, property deeds, and financial statements. The name Hollowbrook Construction appeared on several pages. I just started working there last week as a part-time bookkeeper. The coincidence felt too strange. Len's voice grew louder in the kitchen, coming closer. I quickly set the folder down and headed for the stairs. My savings were almost gone. The funeral costs, first month's rent, basic necessities, everything had drained my accounts faster than I'd expected. When Hollowbrook Construction offered me part-time bookkeeping work, I'd taken it without hesitation. The pay wasn't much, but it was something. I'd been a librarian for 35 years before retiring. Numbers and organization came naturally to me. My supervisor, Mr. Brennan, was a gruff man in his 60s who appreciated quiet competence. He'd pile folders on my desk each morning, and I'd work through them systematically. The construction company was expanding rapidly, building new housing developments across 3 counties. Len's name came up in my second week. Mr. Brennan mentioned the Whitford project over coffee, shaking his head. "Smart guy, your brother," he said. I hadn't told him we were related, though the books on his developments never quite add up the way I'd like. I kept my expression neutral, but my mind raced. "What do you mean?" I asked carefully. Mr. Brennan shrugged. "Payments that circle back through different accounts. Happens sometimes with investors who like to keep things complicated." He walked away, leaving me staring at the Whitford file on my desk. I started staying late, reviewing old ledgers after everyone else went home. The office grew quiet around 6, just the hum of computers and the occasional creak of the building settling. I told myself I was just being thorough, learning the systems. But really, I was looking for patterns. The Whitford files went back 3 years, tracking payments for land acquisition, permits, and construction costs. Several payments looped through companies I didn't recognize. Shell corporations with names like Riverside Development LLC and Clearwater Holdings. The addresses were post office boxes, but something about the zip codes felt familiar. I pulled up county records on my phone, cross-referencing property ownership. My breath caught. 2 of the shell companies were registered to addresses near Mom's house. One was actually Mom's address from 2 years ago before she moved to assisted living. Then I found a transaction dated 2 weeks before Mom died. A payment of $50,000 from Whitford Holdings to a company called Estate Services Management. The memo line read property consultation and legal services. I sat back in my chair, my mind spinning. What property consultation? Mom had barely been conscious those final weeks. Mrs. Klein had lived next door to Mom for 40 years. She was 87 now, sharp as ever, and she'd always liked me better than Len. I visited her on Saturday morning, bringing the blueberry scones she loved from the bakery downtown. We sat in her sun-filled kitchen, and after some small talk about the weather and her grandchildren, I asked about Mom's last months. Mrs. Klein's face darkened. Your brother brought people by several times, she said. Official-looking folks with briefcases. One day, I saw him helping a man in a suit carry papers into the house. Your mother was so weak by then, Ellie. She could barely sit up. My chest tightened. Do you remember when this was? Mrs. Klein nodded firmly. I do, because it was the day before my doctor's appointment. May 14th. She shuffled to a drawer and pulled out a photo. I took this from my window. Thought it was odd. All that business when your mother was so ill. The photo showed Len and a middle-aged man in a gray suit standing on Mom's porch. The man held a leather portfolio. I could just make out a notary seal on his briefcase. The timestamp on the photo read May 14th, 10:47 a.m. I couldn't stop thinking about that photo. At work the following week, I started making copies of relevant documents. Nothing obviously illegal, just being thorough, I told myself. I'd arrive early, before Mr. Brennan, and use the copy room. The machine's hum felt deafening in the empty office. I cross-referenced payments against property titles available through public records. A pattern emerged that made my stomach turn. Len had transferred portions of Mom's land to himself through those shell companies. Small parcels at first, then larger sections. The transfers happened over 18 months, each one just below the threshold that would trigger automatic reviews. The final transfer occurred 3 months before Mom died, when she was already struggling with confusion and medication side effects. Legal enough to avoid immediate scrutiny, but morally bankrupt. I was printing a particularly damning set of invoices when I heard footsteps. My heart hammered as I shoved papers into a folder and tried to look casual. Mr. Brennan appeared in the doorway, early for once. Working overtime? He asked. I managed a smile. Just catching up on filing. He nodded and moved on, but I saw suspicion flicker across his face. I needed someone who understood the legal side. Mr. Sanderson had been Mom's attorney for 20 years before being mysteriously replaced. I found his new office in a modest building across town. He was 70 now, semi-retired, but his eyes were still sharp behind thick glasses. When I explained who I was, his expression shifted from polite to concerned. Your mother fired me, he said carefully. Or rather, your brother convinced her to find new representation. He claimed I was too old, too set in my ways. I showed him the timeline I had constructed. His jaw tightened as he reviewed it. This happened right after I refused to make certain changes to her will, he admitted. Changes that would have given your brother power of attorney over all her affairs immediately, not just medical decisions. Do you still have copies of the original will? I asked, hardly daring to hope. Mr. Sanderson nodded slowly. I keep everything for 10 years. Standard practice. He walked to a filing cabinet and pulled out a folder marked Whitford, Geneva. Inside was a will dated 3 years earlier. I scanned the pages. Mom had split everything equally between Len and me, with clear stipulations about the house and her personal effects. If he's laundering money through construction projects, Mr. Sanderson said quietly, this is bigger than inheritance fraud. Seeing Mom's original intentions in black and white broke something loose in my chest. She'd wanted us to share everything equally. She'd written specific notes about items for me, her grandmother's ring, the antique desk, family photos. The will in Mr. Sanderson's file was detailed, thoughtful, and completely different from what the new lawyer had read aloud. This wasn't about money for me. It was about Mom's wishes being twisted while she was vulnerable. Mr. Sanderson made copies of everything, his ancient copy machine wheezing through each page. "You understand what you're suggesting?" he asked as he worked. "If your brother forged influence over an incapacitated person, that's criminal. And if these construction deals involve fraud, you're talking federal investigations." I understood. I also understood that staying silent meant letting Len win through manipulation and lies. Mom had raised us better than that. "What should I do?" I asked. Mr. Sanderson handed me the copies. "Document everything. Don't confront him directly. And consider consulting with a financial crime specialist." He wrote a name and number on his business card. "This person is discreet and very good at finding money trails." I left his office feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not quite hope, but purpose. Len threw a party to celebrate his new lakeside estate. The invitation arrived at my rental, almost certainly a gesture meant to rub salt in the wound. But I went, wearing my best dress and a calm smile. The house was enormous, all glass and modern architecture overlooking the water. Catering staff circulated with champagne. Len's business associates clustered in expensive suits, laughing too loudly. I stayed near the edges, observing. 2 men from Hollowbrook Construction stood by the bar, drinks loosening their tongues. I recognized them from the office, but kept my distance, listening. "Len's got it figured out," one said. "Creative bookkeeping, smart property moves. My guy couldn't find a thing wrong, and trust me, he looked." The other man laughed. "Ghost appraisers are worth their weight in gold." My pulse quickened. Ghost appraisers meant inflated property values for loan purposes. It meant fraud. I moved closer, pretending to examine the modern art on the walls. The first man continued. "Best part is, it's all technically legal. The documents look perfect." I caught Len watching me from across the room, that same smirk from the lawyer's office. He raised his glass in a mock toast. Back at work, I couldn't unsee what I'd learned. The invoices in the Whitford files suddenly made terrible sense. Property appraisals that seemed too high, signed by different companies, but always approved by the same name. A. Torres, listed as senior appraiser. I searched our company database. No way, Torres worked for any appraiser we regularly contracted with. The invoices were all signed electronically, clean and professional looking. I spent my lunch break in the records room, digging through physical files. That's when I found it. A memo from 2 years ago authorizing electronic signature privileges for Mr. Brennan on all appraisal documents. My boss. My stomach dropped. He'd been signing off on inflated appraisals, probably without reviewing them carefully, buried under hundreds of other documents. Or maybe he knew exactly what he was doing. A new document appeared in the shared drive that afternoon. Len Whitford personal account transfer.pdf. I hesitated before clicking. The file detailed a transfer of $200,000 from a Whitford Holdings account to Len's personal banking, marked as loan repayment. But our company records showed no loan to Len. I screenshot everything and emailed it to my personal account. Then I deleted the email from my sent folder. That night, I sat in my small kitchen and faced the truth. If I reported what I'd found, I'd lose my job. Hollowbrook Construction would circle the wagons, protect themselves, probably claim I'd misunderstood the documents. I had no powerful allies, no reputation in this industry. I was just a 60-year-old widow trying to pay rent. Staying quiet would be so much easier. I pulled out Mom's letter and read it again. "Do what feels right, Ellie. You always had the stronger conscience." She'd written that in a birthday card when I was 16, after I'd returned money I'd found in the school hallway instead of keeping it. Mom had been proud of me for choosing integrity over convenience. Could I do less now, when her own wishes had been stolen? I thought about Len sleeping in his mansion, built on lies and manipulation. I thought about Mom, confused and weak, signing papers she didn't understand. I thought about other families who might be hurt if this continued. By midnight, my decision was made. I contacted the financial crime specialist Mr. Sanderson had recommended, sending an encrypted email with a basic outline of what I discovered. The auditor's response came within 24 hours. He wanted to meet in person, somewhere private. We chose a coffee shop in the next county over, far from anyone who might recognize either of us. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with careful eyes that missed nothing. I brought my copies, organized in a neat folder. He reviewed them methodically, asking precise questions about dates and sources. "This is solid preliminary evidence," he said finally. "But I'll need access to the original files for authentication. Can you provide that?" I explained my position at Hollowbrook, my limited access. He nodded thoughtfully. "Don't do anything that could be construed as theft or hacking. But if documents come across your desk in the normal course of your work, noting irregularities is simply doing your job well." For 2 weeks, I fed him information carefully. A suspicious invoice here, a questionable transfer there. Nothing that required me to break into systems or steal files. Just patterns I noticed while doing my assigned work. Then Len called me. His voice was sharp, suspicious. "Ellie, have you been talking to anyone about my projects?" My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. "What do you mean?" "I barely understand your business." Len didn't believe me. I could hear it in his voice, the way his usual smooth charm had edges now. "Someone's been asking questions about property valuations," he said. "Seems like the kind of thing a bitter sister might do." I forced myself to laugh lightly. "Len, I'm a bookkeeper. I file papers and check invoices. I wouldn't know where to start investigating anything." We talked for a few more awkward minutes before he hung up. My hands were shaking. The next morning, my login failed. I tried 3 times before walking to Mr. Brennan's office. His expression was apologetic but firm. "I'm sorry, Eleanor. We've had some concerns raised about information security. Your access privileges are being limited pending a review." A review. That meant they suspected something. "What concerns?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "I can't discuss specifics," he said. "Someone will be in touch." 2 security guards I'd never seen before appeared at my desk an hour later. They weren't rude, but they were thorough. They watched me pack my personal items, a photo of my late husband, my coffee mug, a sweater I kept for when the office got cold. They escorted me to the parking lot like I was a criminal. I'd expected this possibility, prepared for it even. But it still hurt. I'd backed up everything. Every document, every suspicious invoice, every email I'd legally accessed in the course of my work. It was all on an external hard drive now, safely stored in my home. That afternoon, I met the auditor at the same coffee shop. He already knew about my forced departure. "They move faster than I expected," he said. "That means someone's getting nervous. Usually a good sign." I gave him the hard drive. He plugged it into his laptop right there, scanning through files with practice speed. His expression grew more serious with each folder he opened. "This is exactly what we needed," he said finally. "Multiple instances of falsified appraisals, shell company payments that loop back to your brother, and evidence of forged signatures. We have enough for a formal inquiry." "What happens now?" I asked. He closed his laptop carefully. "Nothing visible for a few weeks. Regulators move slowly but thoroughly. They'll want to verify everything independently, pull official records, interview witnesses. Your brother won't know what's coming until it hits." I felt a strange mix of relief and guilt. Len was still my brother, despite everything. But Mom's voice echoed in my memory. "Do what feels right." Life went on with surreal normalcy. I applied for new jobs, went grocery shopping, watched television. Len appeared in the local newspaper, named Entrepreneur of the Year by the Chamber of Commerce. The photo showed him in an expensive suit, shaking hands with the mayor. The article praised his innovative development projects and community investment. "My sister's always been jealous," he told the reporter when asked about family. "Some people can't handle other people's success." I read those words in my tiny kitchen, eating cereal for dinner because I was budgeting carefully now. The unfairness of it all pressed down on my chest. But then my phone rang. The auditor's voice was calm but satisfied. "Regulators are moving fast. There will be federal investigators at Hollowbrook Construction tomorrow morning. They'll seize files, computers, everything. Don't warn anyone." That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about consequences, about what would happen to innocent employees at Hollowbrook about whether I'd done the right thing. But I also thought about Mom, about her confusion in those final months, about how Len had used her vulnerability for profit. By morning, my doubts had settled into resolve. The news broke on Wednesday morning. Federal investigators raided Hollowbrook Construction's offices, seizing documents and computers. The local news showed agents carrying boxes to unmarked vans. Len's developments were specifically mentioned as part of an ongoing investigation into construction fraud. I watched the coverage from my apartment, barely breathing. It was really happening. Len showed up at my door that night, furious. He'd never visited my rental before, had probably never even noticed the address. He pounded on the door hard enough that Mrs. Chun next door peeked out. I let him in before he caused a scene. His face was red, his expensive suit rumpled. "You did this!" he snarled. Not a question but an accusation. "You went after me because you're jealous and bitter." I stayed calm, though my heart raced. I reported what I saw, Len. Falsified documents. Money laundering. Things that were illegal. He stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his height. "I took care of Mom. I handled everything while you ran off and played librarian in another city. You gave up any right to judge me." My composure cracked. I didn't give up anything. I visited every weekend. I paid her medical bills when you claimed you were cash poor. You manipulated a dying woman. We stood in my small living room, years of resentment finally spilling out. Len insisted he'd done nothing wrong, that everything was standard business practice, that I was destroying the family over nothing. I told him about the original will, about Mr. Sanderson's copies, about the evidence of coercion. His face went pale. "You can't prove any of that," he said, but his voice wavered. "I don't have to prove it," I replied quietly. "The investigators will. They're very thorough." He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. His little sister, the quiet one, who'd always backed down from confrontation. "I could sue you for defamation," he threatened. "I could make your life hell." I shook my head. "My life's already been hell, Len. You made sure of that." He left then, slamming my door, so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was my wedding photo, my late husband smiling beside me. He'd always told me I was stronger than I thought. I wished he was here to see this. Later that night, picking up the broken glass, I found something on the floor. A folder Len must have dropped, labeled private loans. The folder contained documents that made Len's situation even worse. He'd taken out massive personal loans against properties he didn't fully own, using inflated appraisals to secure higher amounts. The numbers were staggering. Over $2 million borrowed against the family house, against development properties still under construction, even against Mom's jewelry collection that he claimed was worth far more than it was. The monthly payments alone would cripple most people. I did the math quickly. Len couldn't possibly be making those payments from his legitimate income, which meant he'd been using money from new investments to pay old debts, a classic pyramid scheme. The whole empire was built on borrowed money and lies, waiting to collapse the moment anyone looked too closely. The federal investigation had just turned on that light. I called Mr. Sanderson. He listened carefully as I described what I'd found, then sighed heavily. "The foreclosures will start soon. Banks don't wait once federal investigators get involved. They protect their interests first." 2 days later, a foreclosure notice appeared on the county records website. Len's lake house, the one he'd celebrated so smugly, was in default. The bank was moving to seize the property. The news spread like fire through our small town. "Whitford Development under federal investigation," ran as the headline in the local paper. By afternoon, it was on regional news. By evening, national outlets picked it up as an example of small-town corruption. Len's business partners released statements distancing themselves from him. The bank froze his accounts pending the investigation. Everything he'd built, everything he'd stolen Mom's legacy to create, was crumbling. I saw him 3 days later, purely by accident. I was at the grocery store, trying to decide between generic and name-brand soup since my job search hadn't been successful yet. Len was in the checkout line with a single bag. He looked 10 years older, his face drawn and unshaven. He wore a wrinkled T-shirt instead of his usual designer clothes. Our eyes met across the store. He quickly looked away. That night, driving past the lake, I saw moving trucks at his house. Not the professional kind, just a rental truck, and Len carrying boxes himself. No wife helping him. She'd filed for divorce within 48 hours of the investigation going public. No friends. They'd all vanished when the money did. Just my brother, alone, loading his life into a truck in the dark. 2 weeks of silence followed. I heard through Mrs. Klein, who heard from her hairdresser, that Len was staying at the roadside motel on Highway 42. The kind of place that rented by the week to construction workers and people down on their luck. I tried not to think about it. I had my own problems. My savings were almost gone, and job interviews kept ending with polite rejections when they called my previous employer for references. Then my phone rang at 11:30 at night. I almost didn't answer the unknown number, but something made me pick up. Ellie! Len's voice was barely recognizable. Rough, exhausted, empty. I need to talk to you. Please. I've got nowhere else. He gave me the address of the motel. I sat in my dark kitchen for 20 minutes, debating. This could be a trick, another manipulation. But the desperation in his voice sounded real. I agreed to meet him the next morning. Neutral ground, public place. There was a diner across from the motel. 10 o'clock. He thanked me, his voice cracking. After hanging up, I sat in the silence of my apartment, wondering what I'd say to him. Wondering if there was anything left of the brother I'd grown up with before ambition and greed had twisted him into someone unrecognizable. The diner was nearly empty on a Tuesday morning. Len sat in a back booth, cradling a cup of coffee. He looked worse in daylight, hollow-eyed and defeated. His clothes were clean but cheap, nothing like the designer labels he'd favored. I slid into the seat across from him, ordering coffee when the waitress came by. We sat in awkward silence until she left. I'm sorry, Len said finally. The words seemed to cost him physically. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. I waited. He continued, stumbling over words. I convinced myself I deserved more. That I'd worked harder, sacrificed more. Mom was getting confused, and I saw an opportunity. By the time I realized how far I'd gone, I couldn't stop. His hands shook around his coffee cup. Now I've lost everything. My business, my marriage, the house. The lawyers say I'll probably face criminal charges. You manipulated our mother when she was dying, I said quietly. You stole my inheritance. You committed fraud. He nodded, not defending himself. I know all of it. He looked up, and his eyes were red. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I'm asking for help. Just enough to get a lawyer to try to make this right somehow. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. Len's face showed desperate hope as I slid it across the table. He opened it expecting cash. Instead, he found a business card. Mr. Sanderson's card, the lawyer Len had pushed out of Mom's life. He's willing to help you, I said. Not because you deserve it, but because Mom would have wanted someone to try. Len stared at the card, confusion and disappointment warring on his face. I can't afford a lawyer like him. I sipped my coffee. He's offering pro bono work. One chance to cooperate with investigators, return what you can, and face consequences honestly. It might reduce your sentence. I leaned forward. Family loyalty has limits, Len. But I still tried to keep ours. He was crying now, silently, tears running down his unshaven face. I don't deserve this. I stood up, leaving money for my coffee. You don't. But Mom deserved better than what you gave her, and I'm trying to honor who she raised us to be. I walked out of the diner, not looking back. Behind me, I heard him make a phone call, probably to Mr. Sanderson. My hands were steady as I drove away. Mr. Sanderson worked efficiently. He convinced Len to cooperate fully with investigators, providing detailed records of every fraudulent transaction. In exchange, prosecutors agreed to recommend a reduced sentence. The court proceedings moved forward steadily. Through it all, Mr. Sanderson also quietly pushed forward the case about Mom's will. He presented the original document, Mrs. Klein's testimony about the suspicious visits, and evidence of Mom's compromised mental state during the changes. 3 months after that diner meeting, the court issued its ruling. The newer will was declared invalid, obtained through undue influence. Mom's original wishes would be honored. I would receive my rightful half of the estate. The house, the savings, everything would be split as she'd originally intended. I stood in the courtroom, feeling Mom's presence somehow. Justice, finally. The money from my inheritance wasn't enormous, but it was enough. I paid off my debts, donated a substantial amount to hospice care in Mom's name, the same organization that had helped her in her final months. The caregivers Len had ignored and dismissed got support that might help other families. A reporter asked me for comment as I left the courthouse. I just wanted fairness, I told her, and to honor my mother's real wishes. 6 months later, I drove past the roadside motel. Len's truck was still parked there, older and more battered now. He pled guilty to multiple fraud charges and was awaiting sentencing. Mr. Sanderson had done what he could, but Len would likely serve time. I didn't feel triumphant about it, just sad for what could have been, for the brother I'd lost long before any of this started. I'd moved back into Mom's house. Walking through rooms she'd loved, sleeping in my childhood bedroom, felt like coming home. I'd gotten a job at the county library, part-time but fulfilling. In the evenings, I'd sit on the porch she'd always loved, watching the sun set through the old oak trees. Sometimes I'd talk to her, telling her about my day, feeling her listening. Family loyalty has limits, Len had said in that lawyer's office, so smug and certain. He'd been right in a way. There are limits to what loyalty can excuse. But love, real love, doesn't abandon people even when they've abandoned themselves. I'd given Len a chance at redemption. What he did with it was his choice. As for me, I'd found peace in doing what Mom taught us, choosing integrity over convenience, truth over comfort. Standing on her porch, I whispered into the evening air, "I hope I made you proud, Mom." Somewhere, I believed she was smiling.